Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. So welcome back to Chamber Chats, coming to you, as always, here in the podcasting studios at the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions, in fact. I live, work, and play in the traditional unceded territory of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, known to us as Songhees and Kusapsan. I always like to acknowledge that. And all of this is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are changing what banking can do for people, for community, and for the planet. We've been having some conversations with mayors across the capital region because there were some changes the last time around, and a number of municipalities are into the 2.5-year mark, roughly, of the new administrations that came in last time around. One of them is the place where I live with my wife, Amanda, and that's beautiful View Royal. Joining us today is the mayor of View Royal, Sid Tobias. Mayor, how are you?
Very well, Bruce, and thanks for admitting that. You could answer most of the questions about View Royal. I think your depth of knowledge is really good, but thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here today. So what's it been like this first 2 years and 6 months? 4 months. 2 years and 4 months. How's it been?
Yeah, it has been a good learning experience for me. I think I came into the position with 35 years of combined military and public service. And so it's been a significant shift from becoming a public servant to becoming a lawmaker. My day starts at 5 a.m, finishes sometimes at 10. And I think council is running particularly well right now. I think we've had some unprecedented deadlines and challenges that we've had to meet, particularly on the housing legislation imposed by the province. So I feel about what we've brought to the table so far. I also feel really good about, the relationships that myself and council continue to build that didn't exist before. The West Shore mayors and myself are getting together on a monthly basis, talking about how to improve the West Shore, as well as the rest of the CRD mayors. So one of the largest items I had on my agenda was really increasing our relationships with our local First Nations as well, the relationships that just did not exist before. So I'm happy to say that we're making some good progress on that as well.
A lot of people are very refreshed when they hear a mayor say or a politician say that they've had a learning experience, that they're actually learning something. So you are, and you have, for sure. Is there anything in particular that surprised you about the role of mayor?
Yeah, I think I come in needing to read extensively, not just the staff notes on a particular decision or topic, but I often dive into research, certainly beyond that. When I came in for our first couple of meetings, I had to have an opinion on everything and basically be decided before the decision actually came before council. Now, what I'm finding is I wait until the last responsible moment to make a decision after I've heard from staff, after I've heard from my counselors, after I've heard from the public. And I think by delaying a decision to get that last bit of information, I think can lead to some pretty good decisions that are reflected on the best information available at the time. So I think that was the big surprise for me is myself and how I related to decision making. And I think the other thing that surprised me was the lack of collaboration between levels of government on some pretty significant issues, everything from homelessness to the drug crisis to affordable housing. It seems to be more painful to have governments collaborate. And I think citizens look at government and they see one entity. They don't break it down to ministries or committees or municipal or regional or provincial. They just see the big G, government. And I think we got a long way to go to work on more effective cooperation at all levels of government to start dealing with some issues that I don't think are going to be solved unless we do.
Yeah, I mean, we do work, we do advocacy for things like repeat offenders, which involves bail reform. That's a federal thing. You talk about people on the street who need recovery beds and treatment beds. That's a provincial thing. So yeah, we're gonna unpack a little bit more of that later on. One of the people that works with me at the chamber said, View Royal has really interesting boundaries when you take a look at the sort of the footprint of the municipality. So a fun question for mayors: how would you describe View Royal to someone who'd never been there?
I like to refer to View Royal as Oak Bay without the promiscuous deer or the high taxes. Just kidding, of course. I think View Royal is about neighborhoods. It's a nexus, as you just mentioned. I think we have more boundaries with other municipalities than any other municipality in the area. Anybody heading, to the West Shore or to the North Island has to pass through View Royal. So it's a conduit for transportation. But I think for the people in View Royal, I would describe them as not so much as a universal sense of community of all View Royal, but definitely within distinct neighborhoods. I think they're really fiercely committed to their neighbors and their neighborhoods and helping each other out in kind of an old school way. I think they're also really passionate about biodiversity, the environment. And I think everybody gets the fact that View Royal needs to grow and densify. But the messages that I have heard is we don't want to become like other areas that have densified rapidly. So how do we build a View Royal that people will continue to want to live in, as well as welcoming new neighbors in as we grow out? And I think they just want generally well thought out urban planning and just not cramming more housing in. Looking at maintaining kind of the form and character of our natural environment as well.
Yeah, we're going to come back and talk about housing again in a sec. But you mentioned when you're heading up island, you go through View Royal. Again, a lot of people, with all due respect, don't know when they're in View Royal sometimes because, for example, Vic General Hospital is in View Royal. You're on the highway cruising right past it right there. So when you open up your email, mayortobias@viewroyal.ca, what are people coming to you with? What are the most common themes or the most common messaging that you get on your email?
Yeah, I think tree protection, particularly for around new developments, mature trees. I'm hearing a lot from residents, like how do we save them? How do we kind of take a European approach and where it makes sense to build around areas of that are sensitive ecologically. Lots of feedback on the size of developments. We've gone from like low-rise apartments to and a single residential to 5-story that are pretty, the massing and intensity is pretty big on these. Congestion on the roads because of development, I think is a big one. Safety in crossing the roads because of the increase in traffic. Folks thanking council on the work on the environment and housing advocacy, such as rental protection and advocating for folks facing really mind-blowing increases to rent.
Now, here's something that's kind of cool. View Royal was named the most livable community in Canada for entrepreneurs. That was in the Globe and Mail. We're going to talk about that and why that is next. Our guest today on Chamber Chats is Mayor Sid Tobias from the town of View Royal. Okay, so Sid, the Globe and Mail did a survey. 448 cities across Canada were surveyed, and View Royal was named the most livable community in Canada for entrepreneurs. Brag about that a little bit, would you?
Yeah, that came out around Christmas time and was overtaken by other news articles of the day. But to be clear, View Royal didn't apply for this. It was a study based on data sets that included taxes, distance to markets, accessible transportation, etc. So being a geek, I love the fact that they crunched these numbers, and I'm glad to see where View Royal actually came out. We do have many entrepreneurs that live in View Royal. And for those reasons, and some of the more subjective reasons I've noted on accessibility to nature in the sense of neighborhoods, I think we can get good mileage out of this, and would encourage anybody who is an entrepreneur to take an opportunity and explore what life is like in View.
Yeah, also there's a lot of properties there that have these kick-ass water views. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place to live. Okay, so let's talk about the business side of this in the sense of economic development, to coin a term, if you will. The OCP plan is going to change, or you're updating that as you go forward. So what are the plans for attracting business yet maintaining the character of View Royal?
Yeah, I think we're in a particular spot. As I guess the spokesperson and salesman for View Royal, I've been reluctant to go out until we get the new OCP to really find out what people want. As you're aware, shortly after I was voted in for council, the draft OCP was voted down. And particularly that was about the lack of public engagement and no real meaningful consultation with First Nations on our or our neighboring municipalities. It was kind of done as an afterthought. The plan also called for densification on the corridors with no real plan to integrate commercial or industrial with that work. So we've just started the journey. We've had our first OCP committee meeting this week, and we're on full tilt for multiple engagements to try to get as many folks that live in View Royal to have input, as well as getting the input from our First Nations and our municipal neighbors. As a first step to say, what are the guiding principles you'd like to see in View Royal to help us on the path? I've heard from council and from residents that they would like to see more integrated commercial space with some of the residential we're building. So I think that will come out, but I don't want to predict exactly what that's going to look like. I'd love to see the engagement process to figure out where it makes sense to build some of the mixed use and what that might look like as far as densification and placement in the town.
So within this OCP, which is official community plan, by the way, that's a time now to bring up the housing targets that have been imposed on municipalities by the province. So let's unpack that a little bit and talk about what does that look like in View Royal?
Yeah, I think, and there's nothing that this council, to be clear, has really pushed. I believe that this is all to the benefit of previous council that they've approved some of the densification that we're seeing now. So our guidelines from the province were 378 one bedroom and studio. 2 bedrooms were 105, I think, and 3 or more bedrooms were 103. So a total of 421 rental units and 163 owned units. That is a lot of building. And I'm happy to say that I think View Royal is going to meet them for this year. But to be honest with you, this takes multiple years to get not only the approvals, but the construction itself in place, right? So, so will we meet them in following years if there's housing targets? Not sure. We're still developing, but this goes by the occupancy license vice when they break ground. So some of the areas that we will find challenging is building out affordable housing, which is more of a provincial responsibility than it is a municipal responsibility, even though we contribute heavily to the CRD housing that builds out affordable housing.
What we, and by we I mean the chamber, and by the chamber I mean me, very often hear from people like builders and developers is that I want to help hit these housing targets, but it takes so long to get a permit, to get this stuff approved, the whole process. There are municipalities that admit that they have a problem there. They just simply cannot keep up with the demand. Is that the situation in View Royal?
Yeah, we're close to it, right? We have a small staff and that has really done some Herculean things to get some of this housing to council for decision. And so far the pace has been good. I think View Royal, as far as rapidly growing areas, is making its mark for a small community with a very small size landmass. So I think you can streamline processes, but I think, we're also noticing mistakes that we've made in development, like putting significant densification on a dead-end street, and being able to factor in the cumulative effect of multiple developments going up at once and what that neighborhood would look like. So I think there does need to be some control over what's being developed, especially if you've got a 20-year outlook. But I'm happy we could probably maintain the current pace of development.
Something that has kind of come to light recently is that the province we're not here to jump up and down on the province, but they've imposed these housing targets on your municipality and others. Yet, as you say, you don't have the capacity to necessarily keep up with that demand. So is there a case to be made for the province and maybe the feds to step up and invest more money. In other words, give you resource to add more staff and technology to speed that process up.
Yeah, and I've got a real concern as well, Bruce, to be honest with you, about what we're building, right? I have mowed down low-rise apartments to put up higher density apartments. Those low-rise apartments are places perhaps where I know I started off as a young sailor. That was what I could afford. They were like 30 or 40-year-old apartment buildings, and we're eliminating those and really gentrifying an area, putting up 100 times the density to rents that few people can afford, certainly not our service workers.
We saw something happen in Colwood. I'm going to switch over now to healthcare, where Colwood has got a program in place to attract and create medical services for their residents. You've done something similar in an investment you've made too. We're going to talk about that when we come back. We're talking today with Sid Tobias. He's the mayor of the town of View Royal. You made an investment in a plan to recruit medical practitioners in View Royal. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the West Coast Primary Care Physician Society, which is a nonprofit, reached out to us and said they needed some help recruiting a doctor for GROW, which is I think one of the largest maternity clinics in the region. Not only serves View Royal, but the region as well. And they were looking for money to recruit. So they came before us with a grant and aid proposal last year. We're just following up and seeing how successful that was for them now, so we can figure out the value of the investment that we made for recruiting a maternity doctor. But it's difficult pulling them in. Interestingly, we're also working diligently with other West Shore communities for clinic space because of course everybody's heard the wait times. View Royal does have the hospital here, but it's over capacity right now, being able to deal with issues that could well be seen by a clinic. So how do we actually increase our level of primary care as a perhaps definitely top three concern of the folks that live in View Royal.
Yeah, I mean, having the hospital in View Royal, I mean, you got the casino there too, but the casino and the hospital, these two major assets. But having the hospital there is a really big factor in life in View Royal, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And I think the hospital also has a cost to it, right?
Yep.
It's not like you're really receiving a lot of tax generation from the hospital. It definitely keeps our fire department and ambulance services very busy, as well as we need to really work on, as you're also aware, our CMP officers now have to attend and be present with folks that commit violent crime, to be with them through the emergency room waits that could actually span a couple of shifts. And the West Shore municipalities are paying for those RCMP officers to sit there, of course, with them. So we're working with the province to try to deal with that. So yeah, there is some benefits to having the hospital there. But from a municipal perspective, there's also some costs associated with servicing the hospital.
Another factor on that is there are helicopters coming and going all the time. So people are aware of that. And there's lots of sirens coming and going all the time in the area too. So that's a part of life there. I want to switch away from that and go back to something you referred to earlier on, where you're doing things on the environmental side, which people are very concerned about in View Royal. So you've got a saltwater marsh restoration project underway. There's an urban forest strategic plan underway. You also have something called Bats, Bees, and Bushes. What's that?
Yeah, so the bats, bees, and bushes, I think, are a look at our pollinators and the use of pollination. I think of close to where you live, Bruce. There's some orchards there that we've had a historical interest, started by a neighbor who donated his land to the town, Welling Orchard, and we have a partnership with Life Cycles that manages the orchard, and through using other people's money through grants, we really try to preserve and expand that place and use it as a model for education as well as conservation. The interesting part of that is some of the varieties of apples are seen nowhere else in the world, and we've had PhD students from New Zealand come up and study them. Some of them were drafted in the Hudson River Valley off of New York.
New York, yeah.
The Dutch settlements there originally, and they were meant to create strains that were hardy. And at one time, View Royal was the breadbasket, not only of View Royal, but it really fed the gold rush, right? For fresh fruit and stuff that they could bring further north.
Yeah, well, the farmhouse was right there, right? Craig Flower was there, and the schoolhouse right nearby as well, which I think is, you've got the schoolhouse, but no, sorry, you've got the farmhouse. The schoolhouse is in Esquimalt, I think.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, school. Okay. So all of these things are going on, and you've got, actually, you increased council size last time too, right? You went from 5 to 7, I believe, in the last election. Is that right?
Total, yeah.
Yeah, and all together. So when those things are all moving forward, you've all got a sort of an eye on the future and what things are going to look like. Talk to me about View Royal 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think in 5 years we're going to see we're out of green space, Bruce and View Royal. So there's no green field left to build on that somebody can come in. I think there's one lot left on the Colwood Strip. So something has to come down in order for something to go up. So I think, our available construction, readily available construction areas are going to be built up. Our traffic, I think, will become more intense, even on the Goose. And I think there'll be a small building out of, or a gradual building out of the small scale multi-unit housing. The legislation that was in and View Royal has worked on, we've actually taken that and to preserve trees and the footprint and setbacks. We've made those small scale multi-unit housing even smaller to permit them so that they won't take up such a big part of a lot. There's some instances that those are being built out now. So in 5 years, that's what I would see, kind of a move from large scale densification to a more gradual densification. That would be my prediction.
I think it's fair to say this whole region is going to look different 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now, but we'll all keep an eye on that. I just want to quickly to wrap it up. There are some volunteer opportunities within View Royal too, if people want to get involved, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we had more applicants than we had opportunities for the OCP committee that I said had met. There's all kinds of volunteer opportunities, of course, with our emergency services, as well as invasive species removal that we partner with Green Team. They're a great way to bond and get out. When I can, I'll get out with the Green Team and help remove invasive species in the area. And I've noted that even people that used to live in View Royal still come back for helping us remove stuff from the parks. So it's a good way to get out of the house and become part of the community.
Well, those of us who live in View Royal love View Royal. We appreciate your time today and all you do. Mayor Sid Tobias, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for your time, Bruce and Chuck.
You bet. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.